Hey, what's up, everybody? While on stream the other day, I was sitting there and talking about the fact that RLCS and the season 10 has come to an end, and kind of my overall thoughts and opinions on it, and started, I guess, getting into the conversation about what I thought it was going to be. And at the same time, we ended up seeing Gyro from FaZe as well as RamS from Top Blokes in chat, and was like, it would be cool if we had an open conversation about this from a outside perspective, myself, a coach opinion, a player opinion, as well as both NA and EU. So they were generous enough to join me on a voice call, and we ended up having a extended conversation about the things we liked, disliked, things we would like to see as improvements, a whole bunch of things about RLCS X as a whole, and things we'd like to see moving forward. That's what you guys are about to see. The video that's going to be playing here in just a bit, it is a long one, is going to be the full conversation with little bits, obviously edited, shortened to make it a little bit more succinct, but primarily the full conversation of what that conversation was and the insight that what it's like for the pros and the coaches and stuff going through this 10-month gauntlet that is the RLCS. So hopefully you guys enjoy the video. Before we get into that, though, as always, if you guys enjoy the content, make sure you guys hit subscribe, turn on notifications, all that fun stuff. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoy the content and would like to see more stuff like this in the future. And as always, enjoy the video. But chat, I had the idea for today to discuss and talk about just RLCS X as a whole. It's been 10 months and 5 days or something like that since you guys have started, because Gyro and RamS are nice enough. They're going to join us, give their thoughts and opinions. So we get a coach's opinion, Europe and North America, player opinion as well, and then outside perspective, obviously myself. So overall, I'm curious on Gyro as a player. Very, very briefly, like if you had to thumbs up, thumbs down overall, how do you feel about this season just as a whole, whether it be about events, any things that really stick out to you, things that you like, dislike, any like really impactful things that you're just like, I hated this, I liked this? Go.
I'll give it a thumbs up, but I like that there was a lot of Rocket League, but there was a lot of times where it just like we had grid, 4 days of grid in 1 week, which is kind of insane. But I like that we took breaks, but I didn't like that every time we had a break, it was 1 month off, and then we had like 20 games in like a whole month or something, and then when we got a break, it was another month. I was hoping it was like it'd be like spread out or something a little bit, because I think a lot of players are getting like burnt out from playing.
So you would prefer nice, like maybe a shorter break but a bigger spread of the matches. So instead of like 4 days of the grid in 1 week with a month off, you would rather have 4 days of the grid in like 3 weeks with only 2 weeks off or something like that. Less time off but more spread in between.
It was just weird because everyone's getting burnt out, and then we get a month off and everyone's like, oh my god, there's no Rocket League at all. And then we go back and then we get burnt out again, and it's like, I don't know, it's just a cycle because there's so many games, but then we get a break for a month, so it makes us want to play, and then we get too much Rocket League back. But it's still fun. I mean, I don't care that much, but I think other players it affects them a lot more.
Do you feel it'd been better if? So I guess there's a couple different ways to tackle it. You can either, like I said, less of a break, but more time spaced in between the events, or still a long break because then you get that feeling back of like, yo, I want to play, I want to grind, but with just less overall, because it was 22 events if you played everything, not including like you're talking between grid, regional, every 3 regionals, major, so that's 4, that's 12, championship is 13, and then the grid you've got X amount of dates, so you're playing an equivalent of, if you count the grid as 1, so 3 grids. So that's, if you play all the grids, all the regionals and majors, that's 16 events, essentially.
Sure, yeah.
Something like that. I mean, that's a lot. It is a lot. But I mean the grid obviously has multiple days. Yeah. And that's where you get that like 22. I think I did the math originally, or what it was. But again, the grid dates and stuff like that all branch out. So would you prefer if there was just like less overall? Or would you think your mindset would have changed if majors were actual international competition, do you think your mind would have been like, oh,
Oh,
know?
I completely forgot that major is supposed to be lands. I think it'd be
Yeah.
fine, honestly, if they were lands and stuff. Everyone likes like being a pro. We play Rocket League, like we lose a tournament, and we want to play the next regional like tomorrow or something because
Mhm.
we're like super motivated. But I don't know. Sometimes we want to break because there's just so much Rocket League, but I don't mind it. It's pretty fun. We all like Rocket League. Like I like having a Rocket League event every week, but sometimes having more than one a week is kind of too much.
Even if it's like a grid and you've got like day 1 of the grid is on Tuesday, day 3 of the grid is, or day 2 of the grid is Thursday or Friday or something like that. Like if there's a few day break in between, does that not work because of the way that you guys schedule like scrims and a day off and replay analysis? Or I guess what is your ideal way of having multiple events in a week? Because obviously with that many events, you have to find a way to schedule those days in so you guys can get ample time too.
Honestly, I think the best one was when we did like, I think grid was on Tuesday and then we had regionals Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think that was pretty good. Honestly, it's honestly just the breaks issue because we had a month break before some like regional or major. We had a month break before the major, for spring, and then we had a month break for the championship. Or in the middle of winter or something like that, we played like one regional, had a month break, and then we had the other regional or something. It's just weird spacing for that. That's
Yep.
what I thought. And I mean this we were playing really bad in the grid. Like we got like what 12 in the grid in spring, which is our, even though our other grids we got top 4 in both of them or something like that. In the spring we got like 12, and we just had like one bad week, but it was the worst one bad week because we had Monday grid, Wednesday grid, Friday grid, then Monday grid again, and all in the same week, and then we just got completely destroyed by a bad week. But yeah, I just don't like that we had 4 days of grid in 1 week. It's kind of weird.
Do you prefer a extended break before like the big events, like before a major or like the championships, right? You guys had like roughly 3 weeks. Do you think having that time to like prepare and kind of do your own thing leading up to it is ideal? Or do you think that should just be like, yeah, week, 2 weeks, okay, let's get into it? Because normally that time is so you guys can travel and boot camp and all that kind of stuff, but obviously
Yeah,
that's not really a thing.
It might have been better if it was a LAN, honestly.
Yeah, if
It's probably not that
sure.
bad. I think 2 weeks break is fine, but if it's a LAN, it's probably good that it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that.
Because that's the balance I'm trying to find. Because as I'm like looking and taking notes on stuff and trying to see the spacing of everything, I'm trying to do it as if things are going as intended. With, you know, the intention here of this month break is, yeah, you have a month break, but at the end of it is a world championship event. You know, this is a 20 plus team international competition from all over the world where, you know, you're going to be playing every other region. If you get bumped out early, not only are you losing points from the major, but you're losing points that your other competitors may be gaining. And that's something that I think was really, really missing from overall just RLCS in general this year, is international majors would have completely changed that dynamic because there's no guarantee that you're getting points within your own major. Like everybody is obviously moving in a parallel because you're just competing against the same teams. But when you're sprinkling international competition, what happens if Europe comes in and claps you guys? They take the top 6, and then the best NA team is 7. Again, it's a hypothetical. I agree it wouldn't happen, but but imagine like now all of you guys are docked a bunch of points, and maybe some of these other teams because they have more, it creates this larger spread. Or you have one NA team that does really well, but the rest get pushed further behind. You know, it creates this interesting dynamic of how the points spread happens, and stuff like that. Obviously,
that's what I was thinking.
That stuff, obviously, when you have the ability to, a month off, boot camp, go into it and stuff like that, those are the intentions that I'm trying to think about. Like, obviously, this is kind of thrown together almost because of the pandemic. Like, how are we supposed to do this? I guess we just commit, we're doing regionals. That's it. That's all we can do. But if LANs did work as intended, I feel like a lot of the, hey, we're feeling burnt out, hey, this and that, I think would still happen. It's just your guys' motivation was also going to be way higher because you are playing international competition. There's that excitement of like, I get to see my boys. I get to go to a boot camp and practice and it gets rid of that mundane feeling, right? Of just like same shit as always. So
What's it called? Would they lower the amount of teams that would make it to the major? Because I know in the first two majors it was 24 teams and like 16 teams or something like that.
yeah, so it went. Yeah, what was it? It was like 24, 20, and then because the first split had 32 teams because they had to give qualification spots to RLCS 9 teams. And then they still ran their open qualifiers and stuff, and then eventually that stuff got weeded out. Which makes me curious on how 11 is going to go, like season 11, if they're going to continue to, or if they're just going to Wild West it again, you know?
Yeah.
But
I think it was sorry, I think it was weird the situation. Go on, you go.
I just don't know how many major spots there are going to be. That's all I had. Because DreamHacks were 32, so.
Per region.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, at the final DreamHack event, though, there was 32 teams total. A bunch that got invited, and then open qualifiers, too, if people wanted to sign up.
I thought it was kind of weird that the way they did the majors. Obviously, as soon as like it was cancelled for LAN events, they did it all online, region only, and basically turned it into a super regional. I think the way they did points for the majors was a little bit weird, because you had teams that scraped through into the major, but with the increased number of teams that were invited, and would have like maybe like a bit of a pop off, and then would suddenly like in conversation for Worlds. I think like Endpoint, for example, in EU, they had a really good full major, and as a result, they were like up there in that conversation. But I mean, they wouldn't have even qualified for the major in a normal situation, and so they would never have been up there. Like it felt like kind of, I'm not gonna say pointless, but like it felt exaggerated unnecessarily, I think.
Yeah, I do feel, and that's where like the international side of it I think comes into play too, because if you come in as like a wild card, I desperately think we need Japan and Middle East as wild cards in some capacity, no matter what. Like if APL wants to run a tournament for the Middle East and for Asia and say, hey, top seed gets to go to these events, even though they're not RLCS, like this is their path in and at least some level of exposure. Give them a wildcard spot, make them be last seeds. They go against like OCE and SAM2 or whatever you want to do. I think there needs to be some representation. And yes, you'd have to take away, I think, in my opinion, you can either do a bye system, so all the other teams get a first round bye, or you can just take one away from NA and EU and do 5 teams only, depending on how you want to do it, just to balance out the even amounts. But I do think a wildcard system needs to be given to those in some capacity. And APL, I think, is doing a pretty good job of showcasing that they could run Middle East and Asia for RLCS sanction. But I think that's still a little bit of time coming. But I do agree. I think with the point system and just being like, yo, you get in the major, you can a chance to double points, and you get a minimum of like 200 or 300, depending on what split you're in, which I do agree with the weighted splits the further you get in, because you want the most consistent and the most recent teams that are performing well right now to get bumped up. But with international competition and not all guarantees of like certain teams going to get points, because like it just, again, like I said, it just makes it a lateral move. Yo, the top 6 teams that are really good are still good. Who would have guessed? And they all get points while the rest of you don't, which does create that separation. But I mean, you see like German Amigos, you know, last split, they crush through the grid, they get a spot, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, look at all those points they have now, compared to some of these other teams that have performed a little bit better consistently over the course of 10 months. Like, it definitely felt, and I like that wild card because it does mix it up here and there, but at real international competition, I think it's a good chance for them to get experience and exposure, not take away a ton of points. Yeah, I mean, it just takes me back to that old conversation, right, of like teams being auto-qualified before RLCS and everything was Wild West, open qualifier for everything.
Mm-hmm.
People can have a bad day.
That was insane.
People can have a bad day. It happens.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't mean that team's better. Maybe better today, but we're not giving them more than one chance. You know, we're giving them literally today and tomorrow to perform. Good luck. I guess overall, do you guys feel like the 6 best teams in the region made it to the Worlds or the championship?
For NA, I feel like it did. I mean, it was either us or Shopify. Everyone else was pretty solidified up there.
I think Giants probably deserve to be in the top 6, but it's also hard to pull out one of Queso or Solary. But I think if any team was going to pull out, it would be Solary. So I think that would be my top 6 on paper. But yeah, I guess it's as close as it possibly can be to the top 6. So
You know, I don't really watch much EU, but I swear Solary got last in almost every tournament for all of fall and like the first winter split or first regional, and they still got top 6. That's kind of
yeah, they
know
like
how that happened.
they did really awfully, and then they had like I think a top 4 randomly, and then they like slowly like climbed. So like they started off really slowly and like built momentum towards the end. They got a couple top 2s and stuff. So I think that's what pushed them in.
Gyro, for comparison, you can kind of think of like V1. V1 had a really rough start when they were with AXB, and then when they brought in Com, they started having a bit more consistent results. So they were in like contention, and they were like, if they performed really well, they could. But Solary actually had some like top 2, some top 4, while V1 was like a semifinal appearance like twice. So similar regards in that side, but yeah, it's with it's this weird balance because obviously RLCS wants to reward the teams that are performing well right now, because then when the competition goes to the big event, they don't want the teams that were like high by power cosmic, you know, where they dominated with Gambit. They come in and it's just like, man, you guys are like barely scraping by. What the like? And went on to win it because Konovi's Konovi, but there has to be some weight to later on in the season, because that comeback mechanic does make for exciting matches. I mean, case in point, I think the thing that is the reason why I asked the question in the first place is you look at the teams, probably like top 8 are all teams that you're like, okay, you know, respectfully, these are the teams I think that should be fighting for the spots. You know, FaZe, G2, Shopify, all fighting for those last spots. All teams that I can consider top 5, top 6, right? You then look at in Europe, Solary, Dignitas Atan, you know, like those teams I think are like, yeah, like depending on the day, yeah, I could see it. So in the grand scheme of things, I think the format works for what you're trying to accomplish, but there is still oddball scenarios where you're like, dude, where does this team come from? What the heck is this? Like, what is this upset? Why are these guys here? Which does get excitement happening, but obviously as the teams that want to, you know, assume that they are the top dogs and consistently perform, you want to make sure that they are there. And I think this format as a whole did accomplish that, despite all the hiccups along the way.
Yeah, I think the only problem with that idea is once the idea of a LAN for Worlds went out the window, I don't know about NA, but EU pretty much imploded in terms of like any sort of consistency of results, like teams completely slipping out like giants, finishing last and everything. Vitality finished like top 12. I don't even know if they qualify for the major. They might have. We like started slipping massively. Guild, who had not won a single event all season, ended up winning a regional and then like doing decently in the major too, while everyone else was doing poorly. Queso as well. Like everything kind of just went out the window as soon as the LAN announcement. So like in theory, if there was a LAN, like the storylines would have been incredible.
Right.
But I think in practice, it didn't quite have the desired effect, I think.
I think it's tough because, like, you can't, in my opinion, make a format with intentions of things going wrong.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right. So I do think there is some things that obviously they could adjust for or try to implement. Like, basically, I think they should just make 2 formats. This is the ideal format. This is if everything goes perfect. This is if we have LAN, etc. But if things don't go according to plan, this is what we revert back to because we've seen what has happened in the past. Kind of like a contingency plan, which sucks. And I think overall, the RL esports team did a pretty good job of adjusting, even though it is not what the fans want to hear, even though it's not what Reddit wants to hear, but who cares what Reddit wants to hear. The RL esports team did a pretty good job, despite there being no LAN and regionals only. And everybody's thinking that it's definitely possible to have a LAN. It's really not. Really not. Not with this scene. Just feels like there's a lot of good that came from it, but at the same time, I can't imagine. Like you guys must have been burnt out so much. It's so much Rocket League. I forget. I think it was Direct, the guy who does all the stats now. He put out this stat about Garrett. So between all RLCS X events, Garrett played 177 series, where he went 136 and 41, which is a total of 761 games. In RLCS's season 1 through 9, he played 119 series and 535 games.
Yeah,
So in
crazy.
just season 10, like, that's insane.
It is ooh la la
Yeah,
Lawler.
I heard that
Hi,
too. I'm
LAWL
pretty sure I saw
blanking.
that stat about K-Dop or something similar. About like 3 seasons and with Dignitas or something, he's had more in RLCS X alone.
Yeah, it's an absolutely baffling stat to just know that in just this season, Garrett has played what? 70, so what, 58 more series? Like 58 more matches in
Honestly-
just this season than his entire the rest of his career combined.
I was talking about this a little bit ago. I forgot with who.
Mhm.
But it's kind of crazy how, like in season 8, we started the season in September and Worlds was in December. It's just crazy to think how short our seasons were
Mhm.
before this, where we just had 7 matches to decide who gets top 6 and then who plays for regionals on one day. It's kind of crazy, honestly. I don't know how we did it.
I mean, to me, it
Oh, yeah.
completely negates the meaning of worlds. Having multiple worlds in a year. Yeah, we're world champs for 4 months. Like, like what it doesn't really add the value in the gravity of what being a world champion is. Like right now for NRG, it feels so weird knowing they're the defending world champs. And it's been that way for what's coming up on now, just shy of what's going to be, a year and a half, which in the past would only be at most 5-6 months. And they're doing it almost 3 times that coming up on. So I do agree that, like you said, the turnaround time and, hey, we're playing a league play with 8 teams, 7 matches, you either go or you don't. Go play for a world championship. Kind of weird. Especially in comparison to now where, like I said, Garrett's playing 177 games.
What's it called? I think also, I mean, it's good for viewers too. Obviously, there's a lot more Rocket League,
Mhm.
but there's a lot more quality Rocket League because in the other seasons we would have 7 matches to determine our season, yeah. So everyone would play a lot more nervous or cautious because that was their only match, and we would have like, let's say, a 3-month off season and come back and we would all forget how it's like to play on stream. So by the time we figured out how to play on stream, it would be like too late.
Mhm.
But now in RLCS X, everyone's playing on stream all the time, so everyone's comfortable on it. And there's so many more games, so you could see how many more people pop off in this season. It's kind of cool, but it's a lot harder as a player, of course.
What's your take on it as a coach? Because obviously, RamS, that's a lot more work for you too.
Yeah, it changes like the attention where like you're playing against 1 or 2 teams each week, and so you could spend that week preparing for a very specific matchup. You could kind of see that there are a few teams that maybe were like that, and so would get caught off guard by teams they weren't used to playing. So yeah, like the approach this season was a lot more like internal. It was more like, let's like make sure we're the best we possibly can be, as opposed to being able to, we'll learn to beat BDS because we play them this week, and then next week we'll learn to beat Vitality. I know it's not like as simple as that, but sometimes you'll have like specific replays to do that, like counter coaching and stuff. So we did a lot less counter coaching this season. Like it was only really until champs or against teams we were like seriously struggling against, like Vitality and BDS early on, and Endpoint, because they were a bit of a bogey team at the time. But they're the only teams that we really had to sit down like that. So the whole approach that you take going into tournaments is different. It's more about like focusing ourselves, and sometimes that can be a little bit more difficult because if you're counter coaching, you're kind of like focusing on maybe a specific strat or something like that, or you're trying to target something specific, and if that's not happening, it's very easy to point out. But when it's internal in terms of the play style, it's a lot more complex, like the problems that might be popping up in the series. So yeah, it definitely was an interesting change, but I enjoyed the difference. It felt like a lot more, hey, we can have our own style and really like just try and make it as consistent as possible. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember. So I had a conversation. If you guys remember Gilly, I know Gyro, you remember Gilly Weed when she was with the broadcast team, but
Of course.
we had a conversation with her in regards to player identities, because obviously we wanted to push narratives about like this is what this team's specialty is. I'm like, they don't really have any right now. And she's like, why? I'm like, because the turnaround time is too fast. Like there's not enough games for them to really develop. It's all reactionary. They're just kind of doing their thing, and they're basically playing to counter what the other team does. Like there's going to be some tendencies, but overall you're just trying to make those adjustments. Like RamS is talking, you guys didn't really game plan for specific teams unless they, were a team that was notoriously like V1 versus FaZe. We don't need to talk about how much you guys won against V1 because I was always on the receiving end of that broadcast and it hurt my heart every time going to game 5. But unless it was a situation like that, you guys were focusing on your own team's identity. Let's make us stronger. And then as the series progresses or as the tournament progresses, we then get into, like RamS is saying, the coaches, the majors, and the championships for game planning against the team, which is where that, that 3-week build up comes. More similar to LANs and world events, which is why I really like championships this weekend, is because after a decent amount of a break, 2-3 weeks, this is normally when teams would go to boot camp. They would work on their game plans. They would know what their upcoming matches are, and they would prep for that. And that's how this weekend felt. It definitely gave back a little bit of the feeling of what I think has been missing from Rocket League for so long. But it was also cool to see all these teams focus on their own identities. Like you could start to see teams have an identity of what made them tick. For the first time, I think, in Rocket League at a severe level. And it wasn't just like 1 or 2 teams. It was a lot of teams started to have an identity, which is really cool. Which you guys, it felt like got that refinement and you really identified what you guys were trying to accomplish. And then you took that and found a way to counteract or find the weaknesses or nuances of other teams and make those adjustments, which was really cool as like a fan from the outside perspective. The thing that I'm more curious, Gyro, I don't know if you have been a part of a team that has primarily stuck to the same scrim partners. If there's certain teams that you guys just don't scrim because you don't see the value of it, and how much that has changed now that at any given moment you could play a team that you may have never seen. Because in the past, like RLCS teams would never scrim RLRS teams. There was no point. They just wouldn't do it. And it stagnated a little bit, the growth of how fast Rocket League's gotten. But like this season, because everybody's playing so many open qualifiers and so many different teams that are, coming in because it's, again, a circuit-based system. Did that change for you guys, or did you guys still stick to the same kind of ones? And then just because you were forming your quote-unquote own identity, it didn't matter who you played. We were just going to quote-unquote be built different. We're just going to be the better team. It didn't matter who we played that was below us. We're going to win no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to what Ram was saying. We just played, who we usually play. We obviously have people that we play more often than others in scrims, but we still have teams that will not scrim against because it's just never a fun time, or we don't really get better from it because they're just way different in scrims. But we scrim RLR, I mean lower level, like mid-tier teams like CLT and I don't really know, Stromboli, V1, stuff like that. But we usually try to get the best scrims possible against SSG, NV, NRG, all them, because we just want to make ourselves better. Because we know at the end of the day, if we're playing a lower team, we could just beat them off of our own skill and just naturally playing how we should.
How much of an effect did playing lower teams like that cause with like bad tendencies? Or is it just like a waste because you're like, why the hell are you guys doing this? This makes no sense.
It's more so, well, a lot of the lower teams, I won't name who, but they just play really different in scrims. Like in tournament, even though like we're on stream all season, so you would expect them to be like used to it by then, they'll just 3-stack net the entire tournament and it's just a free win. But in scrims, they'll be pre-jumping like all 3 up, waiting for a pass as last man or something. And it's just, it's annoying to scrim against because we know that's not how they are, but it doesn't really make bad tendencies. It's more so like, why are we scrimming them? They're just missing every ball or something. It's not making us better. No bad tendencies, just worse gameplay, pretty much.
Yeah, we had the same over here as well. Like just teams, like it would just become frustrating to play against. Like sometimes you just feel like you're getting destroyed, and it's like, okay. And then you see them in the tournament, and they go like 0-2 out of their group or something. And you're like, well, I guess this isn't translating to the tournament. So yeah, you kind of have to weigh up. One of the things I wanted to do was to like try and scrim against at least one team that's outside of a usual group every week, or a team that's starting to look a little bit dangerous in tournaments, like not necessarily just through scrims, because if they're starting to translate it to tournaments, the logic is if they start to get used to it. I think a good example might be like German Amigos. Once they start getting used to it, maybe they'll translate that into a consistent style, or maybe like think of Endpoint, where before, when they were playing like that in RLCS, they didn't play like that at all. I don't know if you remember in Season 9, they used to do that demo stuff and they would never do it. But like once they started to actually get used to it and get used to the pressure, that's when they start to do it, and you have to kind of take them a little bit more seriously again. But before, it'd be like, oh, we're scrimming against Endpoint. Oh, I've been demoed 13 times. And then you play them in a tournament and it's like, oh, they're sat on their net and we're 4-0 up. And it's like, well, what was the point in scrimming, you know? So
yeah, I know it's rough too. I know there's some teams that people just stop scheduling scrims against because they either troll or do stupid stuff or come up with a play style that's just like memey, and you're like, what? Why are we dedicating an hour of our time if you're gonna act like this, you know? And obviously, coaches and players learn not to waste their time playing against those teams anymore. It seems like it's gotten somewhat better, but at the same time, there's a couple that people just put on the whitelist and they're like, yep, not gonna deal with this. So it seems like things are starting to get more refined.
There are teams that are like insane in scrims where they're just so good and so like different to how they usually play that we just don't scrim against them because we don't want to ruin our confidence because they're so good in scrims compared to tournament. I don't know.
Well, he's going to be dropping you the knowledge.
Yeah, that's true as well. I also think that mentality of like not wanting to scrim against teams because they were a bit weird is the like old guard mentality as well, and which is what I think a bit like say,
yo, Lawler, I think for the 5 gifted, man. Really appreciate it,
Team
dude.
Liquid in the arse this season, where they didn't try and learn to play against those teams because they, you know, kept the old guard ego of like, oh, you know, like we'll be better than them, and so when it came to it, they couldn't cope with the pressure and they couldn't cope with teams actually like picking up a bit of steam against them, and so they just got rolled. But I'm sure that's probably one of the things they'd be first to admit, that they had to adapt and learn, play against like all the varying weird playstyles that can suddenly pop out of open qualifiers.
That's when the mentality comes in. That's when you got to get scared of them. Be like, oh my god, we could lose this. And then you perform how you would against a top team because you trick your brain into thinking that they're actually a team that can beat you, which they can, but it's less likely. That's what I do, at least. I always say I'm gonna lose even though I know I'm way better, just so I trick my brain into like thinking that it's a top team to play better against them, and then we win. Yay.
Hey man, everybody's got their own strategy. There's no like one size fits all for it, right? So
yeah,
it's gotta be an interesting adjustment too when you're playing this much Rocket League to not fall into those habits. How difficult, I guess, was it after, because it feels like you guys just were doing the same old like every single week, sit down, play Rocket League competition. Like, how do you still build up the seriousness and the intensity that is, even though it's basically the same thing over and over again?
Honestly, you just gotta look at the points. You'll be like, dang, Shopify Rebellion's 20 points behind us. All right, step it up, guys, and then keep it going. I don't know. I mean, for grids, it was really hard. I mean, obviously we all really tried, but it felt like either subconsciously we were playing worse, or maybe it was just a bad week or something. But we played really bad in the spring split grid, and then in the fall and winter we played really well. I guess maybe because we didn't have an org, so we just, I don't know, maybe subconsciously we played better because we were trying to impress. But for regionals, those are the only tournaments that really feel like it's actually RLCS, because grid doesn't feel like RLCS. It feels like we're scrimming or something. So it's pretty easy to stay in it and not get like pooped out, especially if you hype yourself up saying let's win this or something like that. So I think it's pretty easy, to be honest. It doesn't really get that old because we all just want to keep playing Rocket League, especially if we lose, we want to keep playing more. So yeah.
So it's more of like a self-motivation thing, finding whatever it is to put you in that element. That's fair. Because I mean, there's obviously the narrative of like mentality is so important, this and that, but like you very rarely hear pros, coaches, etc. like emphasize what it is that makes it so important, right? Like, I guess it's hard to articulate a feeling, I guess, is what it comes down to. I guess is the best way I'm trying to like understand it, is like, how do I express that I have to put myself in this mental space, even though I know it's important and I know it's like there's a bigger goal at hand here. You still have to find a way to like trick your own brain, like you're saying, you know, for your sake. If you're playing against a team that you're like, oh shoot, I'm gonna lose, you have to like find a way to trick yourself to be like, yo, this has a lot of weight to it, like this actually matters, even though it doesn't necessarily maybe have that feeling initially, whether it be, you know, in your case, looking at the standings, or you know, just trying to, I mean, how often do you guys even pay attention to the standings? I feel like that's more of like RamS, what you're doing on a regular basis, trying to use it as like, guys, like we need these points, like as compared to the player. Like I don't know how much that varies. Maybe that's different from player to player. Like Jar, I don't know how much you give a shit about like points overall, if you just know like, yo, I gotta play, I gotta compete.
I mean, we don't just constantly check it, but
Yeah.
sometimes we check it here and there. Especially to, I mean, honestly, I don't even remember if I checked it that much during winter. We check it after every like 2 regionals or so to
Okay.
see, you know, where do we stand. But it gets kind of bad because you don't want to like perform enough to be okay. We're 1 round ahead of Shopify. That's it. We get complacent about it, but
Right.
it also helps to maybe motivate us a bit more than we initially would have been. If we see Shopify 1 round, and they're tied with us, we need to win this round, or else they're gonna be ahead of us, something like that. Just, I don't know. It doesn't really matter that much. We check it quite often though. It's pretty important, especially as a team that's fighting for the last spot. Could be different for a team that's like in the top 4 or something, maybe. I don't know.
Our mentality for the season was to primarily aim to finish at least top 8 in every single event. Like that was like the base goal for us every single time, because we knew even though it was top 6 for Worlds, top 8 with consistency was probably going to be enough, because people would rise and fall here and there. And so after the first split and a half, we knew we were in a really good spot. We hadn't finished outside of top 8, whereas other teams like Endpoint, again, I'll bring up, is like they finish high, then finish low, and stuff like that. So we had that, and then we won the regional. And I think something that happened with us because of that level of consistency is like we knew that we had faith that if we kept doing what we were doing, we would be fine. But that also took off a bit of the edge of what we were playing for. It was like, oh, we've done so well already so far. Like, we've already done the consistency level. Like, we'll be good. So I think that kind of bit us on the arse. And especially after winning a regional, which would have been the next, like, big step for us. After we won the regional, it felt like, oh, like, now we have to kind of realign where our next goal is again. And I think that hurt us a little bit. And the other thing that was good about checking the standings, I think, for us was... if we had a bad result, so like winter regional 3, for example, we'd look back and be like, oh, look, we're still, 600 points off 5th place, which means we're like in a solid spot. So we shouldn't be so disheartened. Like, we can just sort of regain, go next, instead of feeling like we just threw away an entire regional, for example. So I think that was the one benefit of the point, like looking at the standings. But on a tournament-to-tournament basis, it's not really worth looking at until you're literally in crunch time. So.
Can't relate. got knocked out by Alpine early in like regional 3 of spring. Like, dang. So it's all come down to the major, eh? And then, yeah.
Hey man, I will say I appreciate it, man.
goal.
It gave me a reason to watch for the first time in months. Like having actually on the line, watching those games between like G2 and you guys and everything, and then getting rematched a couple weeks later and stuff, was like, hell yeah, this is sick. But the reason why I like ask about the mentality and stuff in the first place is back to the original point, is like this format as a whole in the past was literally, like you said, 7 matches or 9 matches if you played in season 9 and stuff. And trying to keep that mentality over the course of 10 months has got to just be like, after a certain point, with nothing at that high level, no LAN, no live event, which is what you guys really play for. Has got to be an interesting side of things. So to kind of refocus back on the original focus of like RLCS X, a couple easy things. Number one, prize pool. Do you feel like the prize pool was big enough? I mean, we're talking 4.5 mil over the course of all the events this year. I mean, it's a big jump off.
That-
But
It is
yeah, it was 4.5 mil plus. Regionals
Split or
were
just per regional.
for the entire thing encompassing. It was $4.5 million for all of RLCS X
okay.
prize total. Majors were 100K, just like regionals. Grid, you guys got money per match depending on the match and stuff. I'd have to look at specifics, but first place usually got like 30K. I don't know if that's something that you guys even pay attention to now. Maybe in the past before you guys were signed by FaZe Gyro. Same with Top Blokes, I guess. You guys are both kind of in that same circumstance before you guys, had orgs or backing and funding. I'm sure those prize pools like allow you to keep doing what you want to do. So, do you think it was a good increase? Could be better? Do you think we should be doing like compendium shit? Like how to? Because obviously a percent of the purchases of keys and crates used to go to how much that percentage was. It could have been 0.01%. It could have been 1%. It could have been who knows. But that's not the case anymore. They just take a percentage of the esports credits.
I don't really know much about how much
Yo, right.
prize pool should be, to be honest.
Right, thank you for gifting 10 more to the community. Just kidding, make it 11.
Too much, too
You
little.
guys gotta give it a 7 from Slide. Make sure you tell him thank
I
you.
will
Super
say,
generous,
I
dude.
saw that South America and Sam got a lot more for their championship than usual, I think, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a 70-30 split. They got 100K, I think it was, which is it's normally like 20, like 25 total. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Prize pool for me, like,
Yeah, it was 100K
makes
for Sam.
pretty
400K for
zero
you guys.
difference.
I assume it's just not
Like,
something on the mind.
I just don't see any. I personally, in my situation, don't see any percentage of winnings, and I push for that myself because I feel like I get paid well enough without the winnings. It was a long, but yeah, like the players are playing, so I figured they'd get the winnings. So in that sense, I don't have any motivation in terms of placement. We have like bonuses and stuff based on that, but
Right.
like financially is not the reason why I'd be motivated this season by any means.
As long as it's not going down in prize pool. Maybe if the next season stays 4.5 mil, it's fine.
Mhm.
But as long as it's not going down, I'm happy with it.
I guess that's the biggest. Then we can focus on you for that, Gyro. Then, so is it something that you even paid attention to when you guys were unsigned?
No, I mean we just see, oh, how much do we get if we win this tournament? Okay, that's cool. And we don't really say, dang, I wish this was double the amount or something like that.
Sure.
I don't really think about it.
It's a good problem to have, Gyro. It's a very good problem to have.
Yeah.
Glad to see you guys aren't stressing, which is fantastic. Whether you're signed or not, obviously it's a little bit different situation now, but a little bit different bonus. Trying to think what else. Format wise, during the days, so it was fall winter split. Do you guys think it should be spring, summer, fall? Do you guys think it should be like when do you guys ideally would the break be? And I know this is going to differ based upon like age and with like school and stuff, because I don't know why we don't start in the summer, because that's when kids have break from school. So I think they should do summer, winter, spring, take off in the fall.
Wouldn't it make more sense to have spring off, because that's when most end of year exams would be? If you're doing it in that logic, maybe.
It depends on where you're from. I know right now,
Oh, actually, I have no idea.
kids are getting out of school right now, or like in this past, like I know a bunch of graduations went down like the past few days. So like if we had summer be the start time when kids are done with school or off of school, so instead of having like summer break and doing nothing of all, this is when they should be playing. Or it depends on what kind of contract. I guess it depends on what you want. It's like, yo, if you're gonna have a break, enjoy your summer vacation. You don't have school, you don't have anything. Also, you don't have any Rocket League, but then you're gonna get double dipped. You get back into the school season, but you also have RLCS to balance too. And I feel like it'd make more sense if they only had to do one, or at least one split or one time period. You guys are both old.
I actually, I'm university, so like I can half relate. Like, I kind of prefer the idea of having just like a complete summer off. But university is a lot less like strenuous on time
Sure.
than like a full-time education like high school or something. But I think the only real problem that really came with like doing it during like school times was some of the scheduling for the tournament times were very early, which meant that you'd have to have like a whole day of school, for example. And sometimes it would start like there were a few regionals that started like Wednesday or Thursday, and then it also have the grid on the Monday and Tuesday, and all of a sudden someone might have to grab a week off school in order to compete at these events, and then you have to weigh that up, especially if we're coming towards the end of exams. It's like that's stressful and that sort of thing. So I don't think the fact that it's during term time is too big of a problem. I'm sure it was a bit annoying to deal with as like someone in high school or college, but I think the biggest thing was like trying not to schedule anything around the same time that people would be in school. I think that would be the best change they can make.
Joe, you graduated this year, right?
I just finished my first year of college this year.
Okay, so you're one of the younger ones. That means you would have been not dealing with. Okay, because I'm curious about the high school perspective, right? Because I remember like some of the EU kids talking when this last split happened, where they were playing like 32 plus over the course of like 3 weeks or whatever it was, when like spring was all meshed together. I'm curious on what their perspective is during that time, because I just don't know.
Well, like for example, in the UK, like exam season is pretty much from April to June or July. So that spring split was like bang straight in the middle.
Okay.
And so, you know, if you're someone competing, let's say top Blokes are still unsigned, it's really hard to get communication to give to say Archie's school that would allow them to really understand the situation, so that if he needed time off, he could get it, and also say he has to rearrange exams and stuff. Early in full split, I got to do that by contacting Scheist and getting Psionics to send through an email and stuff, but it was still a bit of a ball ache. But obviously being signed helps with that, so I can imagine it's like super stressful, and having to actually miss school around that time is like the worst. Like I know Archie was I'm not going to say fortunate, but he went through a bit. Well, it definitely was unfortunate. He went through like a wrist injury, which meant he could basically barely write. So he had to get like a scribe while he was at school and stuff like that. And also exams got cancelled because of COVID. So kind of fortunate in that regards. But yeah, like I can imagine if he had normal circumstances, it would have been ridiculous for him to be having a wrist injury, having to play RLCS, 20 days out of the 30 in a month sort of thing, and then go into school for the other 25 days in the month or whatever, I don't know maths, and then like be having to write and do exams and stuff. Like I can imagine it being like way too much.
Because I'm just trying to think based upon the age demographic, like if it's going to stay at 15, these are the types of things that Psionics has to think about ahead of time. Like my two major things that I think they need to adjust for next season is obviously the scheduling, right? Like they've got to find a way to make sure that stuff is consistent. And this is something that I hope that either you guys as coaches, pros, or whatever have sat down and asked Psionics about like, yo, these are some of the major concerns that we have about this past season, and these are some of the adjustments we'd like to see. Or I hope they like send you guys like a questionnaire or something, like literally anything to get some feedback and be like, yo, how'd you guys feel about this? Scheduling on this, trade window situations, like these types of things. I hope they get your feedback on so they can make those adjustments. Format wise, is there any format that you guys really, really liked, didn't like, and why? Like we had Swiss, Double M, and Round Robin.
I'll say the Swiss was definitely the easiest format, but I don't know, it was definitely the easiest because you had 3 tries and you had to only win 3 times. And I think the winter was probably the best format for the double elim. It made it feel more like a tournament, I guess. Every match mattered. And then the spring, it was just whatever, to be honest. It was just groups.
Lawler.
It was a lot of games. I don't know. I think the winter was probably the best, even though we did the worst in it. But it's Swiss was really easy to play in, so we got top 8 no matter what, because we just had to win 3 times before we lost 3 times, which isn't too difficult to do.
When you're one of the top teams, yeah. I mean, the whole point
Yeah.
of Swiss is to make sure the best teams progress through. And if you're biasedly the top 6 teams, Gyro, yes, it should feel easy, but it's not. Gyro, newsflash. For a lot of the other teams, it's very, very difficult. Okay, I'm a huge fan of Swiss. I really like Swiss, because you are getting a 1-0 team versus a 1-0 team, a 2-0 team versus a 2-0 team, and you get to see those innate storylines. But there is a lot of matches. It may not feel like it for you guys, but that's because there's 3 streams running, right? Like it just go. Coach perspective for you, thoughts, Rams? I personally hate double limb.
Yeah, so
Yo,
like,
what up, Neil?
Swiss
Hey, dude,
was
brother.
definitely,
19
I
months,
agree,
man.
like, the
Neil, I
easiest
think we're
in
getting
that
together
regard,
this weekend.
especially for a top team, and it kind of rewarded consistency the best. So in that regard, like if RLCS was Swiss for the entirety of RLCS, like every split was Swiss, I think we'd have been, had very, very few hiccups and it would have been fine. And I think the only problem with that format is when it got to the playoffs, because it was single elim, it was just kind of like, oh, who's going to pop off today? And so you get some weird results that way, but that's fine. That's kind of the nature of a tournament sometimes. Double elim was the harshest format, but I kind of agree. Like our regional win came from the double elim format, and it just felt like so much better than if it was like we got 3 Swiss and then we had like a pop off. Like it felt a lot more. Every single result was like a massive grind, and it was like it got consistently harder, etc. So, and I think the spring format, I think my feeling towards it is kind of skewed because of how spring was. But I actually think it kind of has like the best of all the worlds, so to speak, where you had the round robin, so you get put into a group and you get to play everyone once, so that's kind of a level of consistency. Then you get rewarded if you do well in the group. You get obviously eliminated if you do horribly, and then if you finish in bottom 2 or 3rd and 4th, sorry, you get put into the lower bracket, and then you have a chance to redeem yourself, and then through that you go into a playoff. I think that was a really good way of doing things, because it kind of has it was like Swiss almost into double elim into a playoff, so it was like kind of everything together. So I think that had the most potential to be a great format. I just think, like I said, EU imploded at that point, so I think everything got a bit skewed, on top of the fact that spring was so heavily scheduled that it was draining. Like it felt like when you're doing round robin, then after you've just had a completely packed schedule, it's like, oh, what are we doing this? Like I can win one series and like not have to care about these round robin games, and then blah 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 blah. So
Okay, because I do agree with that. I really like Swiss because of what it is, right? But I also really liked a little bit of everything from the round robin groups, double elimination, so people still get their double elim. You get pros and cons of being, best performing or worst performing, but you still weed out the worst team over the course of the round robin. And then single elim, because I hate double elim final brackets. I can't stand them, and we don't need to go on that rant. Even though chat loves it when I do. I hate double elim final bracket. Jerry, you're gonna say something? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, I know from the top teams like NRG, SSG, Envy, they all really like to end the second split,
Winter, yeah.
the double elim, yeah, because especially for the top teams, they like it the most because it shows that it's more of a tournament based and it's more like rewarding consistency. But for us, like a 6, 7, 5 team, the Swiss was the best because we could lose a series here, series there, and we'll still make top 8. And in the end, we could still win the playoff tournament. And I think the 1, 2, 3 teams in NA just didn't like that it was possible that a team could lose 4 times and still win the entire tournament. And I think that's why top teams prefer the double elim more. But for where I am, the Swiss was definitely the best for us.
I think the difficulty is that teams don't understand the purpose of those formats is to weed. When you have so many teams, you have to find a way to get rid of them. That's why I really liked round robin and why I really like Swiss, because Swiss is a good way to be like, yep, these are the teams that are consistently winning. I don't care how many times you lose. Your only goal here is to make sure you get out of the cesspool that is 32 teams. Like Gibbs is saying in chat, what's up, Gibbs? Swiss is Bay. I love it at the beginning of the year, but not so much as later on. And I agree, because at the end of the year, you have less teams that you're pulling from. All these teams should be refined to a point where these are the best, right? Well, when you have 32 teams, that's expanded to quite a few. And there is going to be some teams like La Familia or something where everybody should be beating them convincingly, unless you're V1 and everything has to go to 5. Jesus Christ. But double elimination I can understand, especially for the top dogs. Like, everybody has the same equal amount of chances. It's all consistent. You lose twice, you're out. No matter who you are, lose twice, you're out. But I think it has to do with the mentality shift of this part of this format is literally just to get rid of the worst teams. That's all it is. Everybody has the same amount of lives. Everybody has the same amount of chances. And if you close out those chances earlier, then you play less games and you get to relax a little. You know, you go 3-0, sick, I'm done for the day. Peace. Rather than, well, that's not fair. They got to lose 4 times. Like, you could also have lost 4 times, but you didn't. That's cool. You know? And I think that's where that difficulty comes in. I personally dislike double elimination because of lower bracket and momentum and how much that mentality of, this team has been playing like 7, 8, 9 matches that actually matter. They got momentum coming through. And there's a big reason why we got rid of it in the RLCS. For those that don't remember, this is more so for chat. Season 1, perfect. Season 2, lower bracket. Season 3, guess what? It's a lower bracket. Season 4, Gale Force is really good. Season 5, guess what? It's a lower bracket. Season 6, also a lower bracket. So out of the 6 seasons that we did double elim, lower bracket won 4 times. Why the is the team that lost having an advantage going into the grand final? It's the complete antithesis of what a winner's mentality should be. You're supposed to give an advantage to the team that's winning. But because of the way Rocket League plays, most cases it was the opposite. While in a single elimination, both teams are coming in with the same equal. They're both winning, have yet to lose, same momentum. It is equal. The only thing that's not perfect is one team more recently played on stage compared to the other, which is impossible to do. Unless you do like an extended break where both have to just get iced for like an hour or something. You know, maybe we do a show match beforehand. But that's personally why I think they got rid of double elimination. I hate double elimination for that reason. I think for some games it works, but for Rocket League, I'm not a fan. With Swiss, round robin, etc., I do understand. I also understand the reasoning of double elimination because it does make everything equal. Obviously, Gibbs is the god behind the formats. They consult him heavily on that stuff. He's the one that basically put this all together. He won't take credit for it, but Gibbs, I know it's you. Don't lie to us. You're just trying to avoid blame. Gibbs, you big brained. I know I do some of the stuff, but I just have a voice in the room. Gib, you have the loudest voice in that room when it comes to formats, all right? Giga Brain Gibbs. I'm putting all the pressure on you, Gibbs. It's your fault if stuff goes bad. Don't f**k up. Love you, Gibbs.
I was gonna say, what Gibbs said about the manipulating bracket, I mean, obviously teams look at the, what group they have. If they win this, they'll play this, whatever. Or they're like, oh, if we lose this, and then NRG don't get upset by this team, we'll play this team or something like that. But no one will ever actually do it because it's too risky. Everyone just wins. And at the end of the day, you have to beat everyone. So I wouldn't really say anyone tries to manipulate brackets. And for double elim, honestly, my only issue was that my team was going into it as a top 6 team, or was it top 4 or something? So we had a bye, and we would do bad in it because we had a bye. So we would play a team that just came off of a win and we haven't played yet, and then we would lose first round in the tournament. And that was pretty depressing. And by the time we got to Winter 3, we didn't have a bye because of how bad we did with the buys in the first 2, that we made it to like top 4 because we didn't have a bye, and we just used the momentum to go further into the tournament.
Yeah, it's scary because obviously there's, again, it continues with the same reason why I don't like double elimination, is if you have a bye, right? Say you're first seed through 4th seed, and you've got teams that are like 9 and 16 playing each other or whatever, whatever the heck it is. Those teams are going to have one game of warm-up, which matters so much more on the day rather than like a scrim you guys played earlier because of, obviously the mentality that goes along with it. And then they come into a game feeling fresh and warm, and then they get to play against a team that hasn't played a real match yet. That same issue is why I don't like double elimination. The lower bracket. It's the same mentality. So it's like, how do you find a system so that doesn't happen. And that's why I think I liked Swiss so much and why I liked round robin so much. Because no matter what with round robin, you're still playing so many games, right? And there's always going to be a moment where like you have to play game 1, take a break in round 2, then play another game in round 3 or something, which sucks. But that's just the nature of the beast. But I remember seeing like some of these teams that were like, yo, I hate this bye. I can't, like, we lost because this team, this and that. I'm like, dude, you're second seed and you're losing to 16th seed. I don't want to hear that. You lost to 16th seed in your first seed. There's no excuses for that. Like, you got to bye because you're the better team and you just dropped to the worst team in this tournament. That's on you. Because
oh yeah, I mean,
there's
if
no
you're
perfect
the higher seed,
yeah, like there's no perfect
like
scenarios.
1
And
to 16 is, it's just, you
Yeah.
can't do anything about it. But like, I'm saying more like 5 or 6 against like 9, 10 or
Yeah.
something. 9,
a lot
8,
closer,
that
sure.
just came. That just came off of a win. That's what I was saying. But
yeah, I'm with you.
obviously, NRG is not gonna lose to like Charlotte Phoenix or something. Which honestly, they've gotten a lot better. So I shouldn't say them, but I just couldn't think of a team.
It's a different
So,
Charlotte Phoenix. You're fine.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
local now. It's okay. They have gotten
Yeah.
significantly better. Yeah, it's a brand new team. Like, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, Gibbs is saying too. Online buys, I think it's not as big as a deal, but online, it's a huge deal. Yeah, it's a massive deal online.
Yeah.
Having stage reps goes so far. So
Which is crazy because NRG still like destroyed SSG in season 8 Worlds when NRG had a bye and SSG just came off of a win, which is kind of crazy, but does go to show how much better they are, I guess.
I'm trying to think of anything else about formats that I'm curious on your guys' takes.
RamS? Any RamS in the chat room?
Yeah,
Any rammers?
I've just been chilling. Anything about the format from this season?
Yeah, or anything you guys can think of. It doesn't have to be specifically format. I'm just trying to go through my list of things that I know I've been kind of like churning in my head. Because obviously like schedule formats is a big one. Like schedule needs to be refined. The format definitely. I don't know if they're gonna. I don't know if for the format if they're gonna do the same thing where it's like each split is a different thing. I don't even know if they're gonna do more splits. I don't know if they're gonna, you know. I didn't grab the kids, but if any players, coaches have suggestions, my DMs are open. Sounds good, Gibbsy. Get you later. Tell the wife and
We'll
kids
not
what up.
message you.
My mind's kind of drawn a blank now.
Yeah, I mean it's tough
little
to
bit.
kind of think back 10 months of Rocket League, you know.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing that's pretty cool about Swiss is how many chances you get as like a lower team to kind of like show yourself. Like if you get nervous during the first game or the second game, like on the third one you're against a level team who's 0-2 as well, you might have like a bit more calmed nerves, and so you get to see some teams maybe like push through a little bit more. I think like Fadeaway, for example, or I can't really think of others, but like you get a few teams that like are able to push through that and perform as a result, which is cool. And at the same time, it doesn't reward the team who's kind of just really feeling themselves on that one day to just like, oh yeah, we're sick, and then they have to turn up the next day and try and do it again. And teams who have those pop-off days don't tend to do it again the next day.
Right.
That's a big one.
Because yeah, you mean you may have a
in,
team coming in like kind of cold, right? Team comes in cold, they get that win over the top, and then it's like, okay, you're playing another 1-0 team. Good luck, you know. And it kind of negates that, like you're saying, which I get.
I was gonna say in the spring, I think it was Stromboli or something. No one thought they would do good, and then in one of the round robins, they just had a really good day, and they went like 3-1 or 4-0, whatever it was, and they made it to the knockout gauntlet, and then they just got destroyed. And next regional, they got last place in their thing. So, I mean, that's kind of nice that they don't just get rewarded off of one good day. They don't like, because that's the issue with the double elam bracket. Because if that team popped off on the first day of the double elam bracket, they actually just knocked down a good team.
They'd be top
And
6 like instantly.
Yeah, they'd be top 6 instantly, and they would knock down the team that's usually better than them, and then they would just, the next day would come along and they would just do horribly, and that's pretty annoying.
It sounds almost entitled, but like it is true. It's like it's annoying when a team will do well when they're not meant to, as like an upset potential, and get like massively rewarded for it, because like the part of what makes a top team is the consistency of it.
Yeah.
And so it's frustrating when that gets taken away.
If you guys had an ideal format with that, so like with all the things that we've discussed, pros and cons of Swiss double elim round robin, if they were to do it for an entire season, or do you guys like the mix-up? I guess that's one thing I should ask. Do you like the fact that each split had a different format?
Going into it, like, because it was our first season as RLCS X,
Mm.
and they switched this format every time, I don't think many people liked it. But looking back on it, I probably would like it to switch, because I wouldn't want Swiss the whole time, and obviously I wouldn't want double elim the whole time. If anything, maybe round robin the whole time would be good, because it's a lot of games, and the knockout gauntlet, like, I don't know, it just seems a bit more consistent than the other two, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. I think I like it switched up, but if I had to pick, probably the round robin the whole season.
I think, yeah, I think it's probably better to be switched up, because I can imagine a world, let's say it was the same format across the whole 10 or 11 months or however long it was. At some point, if there's a level of consistency that's playing, you're going to see the same matchups and the same results happening over and over again. You're just going to have a repeated tournament outside of the occasional pop-off like upset. But like, if we're playing Swiss, we know that, okay, on round 1 we might be playing Minx Gaming, and then round 2 we might play like Endpoint, and then round 3 we'll probably play Vitality, and if we lose that we'll probably play against like, you know, Galaxy Racer. Like it becomes like, oh, we're just going to do that. And we even felt that towards like the end of the Swiss format. It was like we felt like, okay, that's what's going to happen because of how it's been going. So or like double elim as well. Like we knew, okay, if we win, we're probably going to play Galaxy Racer or Giants, and then if we win that, we'll play against Vitality or BDS, and you're just going to have started to have like repeating storylines. So I think when you change the format, at least you get some more fresh matchups and different levels of intensity for different matchups and stuff like that. So I think mixing up is probably the most important, just even on a viewer basis, and also to stop teams kind of going through the motions a little bit.
I don't know if other games have that same issue. If they just like, because I remember when it might have been fall, maybe it was winter, where like Space Station Energy just kept playing each other over and over and over again. It was the same exact match, always in the semi or the quarterfinal.
Guild and EU.
Yep. I mean, V1 FaZe ran into each other a ton, and that just depends.
G2.
Yeah, it just depends on the seeding. I think the seeding, obviously, when you're playing that many matches and it kind of pairs out, like the only way it changes is if that team has the upset and then adjusts where they get placed. Which, again, if you're trying to reward consistency, that's just going to be like, hey, you're going to keep clapping this team for another month, like. So I do totally agree with the mixing up the formats. And there's only so many formats they can choose from, right? Like other than Swiss double elim, and like nobody's gonna do single elim. You want to piss off every pro? Single elim this split. Good luck, boys. Like,
yeah, 64 team best of 3 single elim bracket. That's what full split should be for this next season.
You mean IWO?
Consistent.
Yeah, random seeding too. Just throw it all together.
Yeah. What's that? Your top team in Europe? 280 seed. Good luck.
Yeah, Vitality second round. Let's go.
God.
You know, now that you bring it up, I mean, I already knew about this, but it reminded me that every team actually does play each other all the time. Because I know in Swiss and round robin, I think maybe winter as well, it's always, the groups were always the same. It's always us, SSG in the same group, G2 Energy always in the same group, Envy and Rogue, or Envy and like lower tier teams that they should be are in the same group, and then the other side is Rogue, Sonics, like a very balanced group. It's really weird. It's like us and SSG usually have like the hardest group, and then NRG G2 is just a hard group because they're in it, and then Envy has usually the easiest group out of everyone, and then Rogue, Sonics, E United, that's just a well balanced, like, you know, anyone can win, but it's probably just gonna be Rogue type of group. It's the same thing every single format. I don't know why. I just realized that.
So each format had the same matches happening, but those matches changed based upon what format it was. So like in Swiss, the same teams played each other all the time. In double elimination, that team would play the other same team every single... Okay. So it doesn't matter what format happens, it's still going to happen. It's just a matter of which teams are the ones that are the lucky one pairing. So there's no real way to avoid it. It's just...
And you put them in different scenarios too. Like if we play against Vitality every single time at 2-0 in Swiss, that has a little bit of a different level than if it's like playing Vitality every single time in like the first round of the round robin group, or they're in our group for round robin, for example. But yeah, the other thing I was just thinking of in terms of improvement and format, etc., was I feel like the grids, as much as it granted a wildcard spot, it actually felt pointless at times in the season. I don't know if you felt the same way, Jared, but like there were times where we're like, oh yeah, we've got to play grid again, and ultimately we're like, we already know we're a major team, so what does this grid even mean outside of winning like a nice tournament to get some confidence and stuff? There was a bit like, it's so exhausting, or like the schedule's so packed as it is, and now we're playing a tournament that like ultimately means very little for us in terms of the context of the RLCS season. It's like, why are we doing this? You know?
Good insight, Gyro. I like it.
Wait, what? Sorry, wait, did you ask me something?
I fully did, yeah.
You wait, say it again.
Here,
I was
super
sorry, I was about to say
TLDR.
All right.
Rams basically stated that grids feel like if you're already guaranteed a major spot, they feel kind of pointless. Like you guys are already grinding a bunch. So if you're a team that knows that's going to qualify for the major, like what's the point other than outside gaining some confidence? Like it means so little. I don't know if you guys feel the same way or what.
No, yeah, I heard you. I just didn't know you asked me a question.
He like
Okay,
he presented all this information for you to react to as well and see if you agree or not. And you're just like, you went ghost,
yeah,
and he's just
I
like,
agree.
cool. Like,
honestly, because it pretty much whoever won the grid, it was always a team, obviously, that already made it.
Mhm.
I think the only time that didn't happen was like Solary won the grid or something like that, and they had a horrible fall split or something like that. I don't remember, but I think it doesn't really matter that much. It's come to the point where, let's say NRG won the grid, and you got this number 16, 17 team, Xset and V1, hoping that, like, I remember I was talking to someone and they were like, if V1 gets top 6, because top 6 is the only like set 6 teams that can get the wild card if they don't make it through points.
Yeah.
They're like, if V1 gets 5th or 6th, then we make it to the major, because if they win, they get the wild card, and then we're already above this team in points or something. Whereas it's like, if I don't know, if FaZe got the number 1 spot and got the wild card, we wouldn't make it because whatever reason. I don't know. I don't think I said it right, but you get what I mean. It's
Yeah.
like you need some team to win or whatever to get them out of points contention, so you can make it through points, and then
yeah, the grid was
you don't want a
weighted
team below
heavier.
you.
Like they took the grid wildcard as a priority over some of the other stuff, like for a qualifier. It was kind of weird how that applied, and I get it because they wanted to add importance to the grid. So I guess just like, how do you counteract that? Like if you're a team that's going to qualify and you're a regular, like you still have to play in the grid, but what do you do to make it worthwhile? Like maybe like if it's for a land spot, like maybe it's just because it's online. Does that change your guys' opinion? Like knowing that technically that's an automatic bid to the major. No matter how you do in all these other events, if you crush on the grid consistently, you go to the major. A LAN. Like that's your extra life.
I feel
Yeah,
like if you
actually.
it probably does. Yeah, it probably does mean like a lot. But if you're not performing in the regionals, then I
Grid's
can't
probably not
see a
gonna
world where
change.
you're. Yeah, like I
Okay.
can't. I really can't see teams outside of a team that like plays because of pressure. Maybe like German Amigos, for example. I think they only qualified for one of the regionals in like spring, but they made it second in the grid, for example. But like, I can't see that being super common. So like for a team performing badly in regionals, I can't imagine then turning it around in the grid in that same sort of time period. Like it would be a bit strange. The other thing I just remembered was I don't know how much of this is public, but the seeding for regionals, you were better off not being in the grid sometimes than if you were in the grid performing badly.
Yeah, because
and that was completely messy.
Yeah, because they when you didn't have enough results to compare with, like if you have only 3 regionals of seeding compared to, you know, what, 8, 9, 10, like majority states that you're gonna probably have a little bit lesser performance over the course of 6 weeks of play as compared to a week and a half. If you have a good week and a half or whatever it is, So yeah, if you didn't qualify, I forget which team that was for that it really benefited, where because they didn't qualify for the grid, but they had good performances in regionals, they got a higher seed than Vitality or whatever it was.
I think Queso or Magnifico, I think it might be, or something like that. Back in fall, it was like that. There was a couple teams that had that. Singularity, I think, might have been one at some point. There was like a few. It was just a bit weird. I don't know. I think that's like an easy fix if you just like prioritize the grid teams slightly higher and than the teams that don't qualify for a grid. Like not in a punishing way that's like, oh, you didn't make grid, so now you're always gonna have a bad seed. But it's like if a team's in the grid, don't punish them for being in the grid. That's what it felt like sometimes in terms of seeding.
Well, I want to bring it back to what we said about if the majors were lands.
Mhm.
So if the majors were lands, let's say it's, I don't know, top 6, top 8 teams only make it from each region. Let's say top 6, right? And I'm
So you're
pretty
saying
sure.
you would assume like another 16 team, just like Worlds, 6, 6, 2, and 2.
Yeah, so top 6 from each
NAU.
region. Yeah. So I think in the winter we did really poorly. We got like 24th and then like 12th and then we got like 5th or 4th,
Mhm.
which I'm assuming is not top 6 for that
Do you want me to check?
split.
I can find out. Give me a
Let's just
sec.
say it's not for the like if you want, but yeah.
I'll let you
Let's
know.
just say it's not top.
How did he do? Let's find out. Chat. Any bets? Any bets? This is for winner.
It sounds
Alright,
like it sounds
boys.
like 9th or 10th.
All right, let's calm down, guys.
You're talking about winner, right?
So what?
You were
Winter,
talking about
yeah,
winner.
Yeah. So assuming we didn't get top 6 and the major
It was fifth. It was fifth. You guys went to the
Dang, okay.
major. You guys went to the major and took pretty well actually.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, and you got 400 points in the major because you guys were loser semis, so you guys were top 6. 1, 2, 3, 4.
anyways.
Jesus, Gyro, we performed so bad. We did all these things. 5th place in the winter.
Yeah, we got 5th. That's what I said.
It's still
And
funny
then before
though.
that, in regional 1, we got like 2nd rounded. Anyways,
Yeah, regional 1, you guys only got 70 points, which is, I mean, yeah,
I mean, we only
about
got 2nd round 'cause
consistency,
we had a
Gyro.
bye.
about consistency.
Anyways, going back to what I was saying, let's say we got 7th, and it's top 6 to make the major, right? But we got like 4th or 3rd or something in the winter grid.
Yeah.
Then that would mean something because
Yeah, it's
we
huge.
would get the wild card spot and we would make it to the major. But
Yep.
I think if it wasn't like how it is this season, if it wasn't LAN, it just really doesn't mean that much at all. So yeah.
Right. So you're
That's what I
saying,
was saying.
so you're saying like in comparison to where like if LAN is a thing, because again, like you can start off poorly, like you're saying, we got basically first rounded, but we still have 2 other regionals to make that up, which you guys did, just shy of average, like 160 points. God, what is that? That's 5-6.
Or like around the
right?
16.
Yeah, it's 5-6.
Oh, okay.
So 160 points is a 5th, 6th. So you had 5th, 6th, in back to back. So regional 2 and 3, you guys got 5-6, 5-6. So 5-6, 5-6, and then basically our first round. So you guys are 8th seed. You lost to E United. You dropped down, then you beat Is I'm Dreaming, and then lost to Sonics. So you guys knocked lower round 2. So 70 points. I wonder if you guys get even worse. You get 40 points. Okay, so for that first round, you only get 40 points. Even still, man, if you get 5-6, 5-6, like that's still enough to make top 6, even if you take last place in one of them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So again, you can have one bad round and still make up for it. So as long as like what RamS is saying, if you're playing terrible in every regional, the grid doesn't really mean anything, which is good, right? The grid is for your exact circumstance, right? You know what? We had one bad, maybe an event where we didn't perform like top 8 like we expected, but we know we're better than that. So you come back in the other ones and you have a consistent performance over the course of the entire split, and hopefully the grid is enough to also, tie along with that. And that's the whole point, I think, is showing that one event, one bad day or one bad event isn't enough to keep us out, right? It's about the overall story, even if it's within a split, let alone the entire season. So, in your guys' circumstance, that's perfect, right? Like, you guys may not have had the best regionals, which you guys did fine. But for V1 circumstance, which is the team that ended up qualifying in winter, V1 was 130, 170. So they had a bottom placement, not like 16 to 20, but the same losers round 2, and then they had 100 points, so probably another round after that. So a losers round 2, losers round 3, and then like a losers round, so like losers like quarterfinals. So they were doing okay, but in the grid they took 6th and won the tiebreaker because Rogue was already in.
Yep.
So when you look at like Kansas City Pioneers, who performed pretty rough, that's when Kansas City Pioneers kind of hit that weird plateau and started dipping a bit. Sonics had like a couple upsets here and there, but it still wasn't good enough. PK, same thing. And then you look at these other teams that are below them, and it's like, yeah, of course they didn't make it through. So you got the guys that are expected to make it, and then, so yeah, it makes sense. It ends up working out. So the system itself seems like it worked pretty well for what it was. It's just because there is no LAN, it doesn't, it just feels like it kind of just meshes all together.
I think the best like solution for it, because the way I'm kind of thinking about it is if it was 10 teams that go to the major, let's say, for example, like it was, I think, in winter, the 10th placing team via regional points compared to the team that finished the best in the grids, like who's more deserving of that major spot? Because if the top 9 teams that are already like pretty much a shoe-in for the major spot through regional, they're not going to be looking at the grids with too much intensity. So then the level of the competition goes down just a little bit. So then performing well in the grids compared to performing well in regionals kind of has a... You'd have to weigh up which one is worth more. So like I think, especially because the way they done each grids, they like separated it into like who performed best overall in the split. If you actually added just like even the 401 points and same way you did like regionals for worlds in that way, then at least like you'd be like, it's almost like an extra regional per split, but spread out over, 10 weeks or so. Then teams would look at it and be like, hey, look, we're trying to compete for worlds. If we're not taking this seriously, then someone else is going to gain a couple 100 points on us. And so then all of a sudden, in that same situation of a team that's had a poor couple regionals but performs well in grids, they're still rewarded 1 with points and 2 with the major qualification. So I think realistically, if they just added a points distribution at the end of the grids to the grid teams, and it also like it kind of punishes people for not qualifying. Because realistically, if you didn't qualify for grids, you had less games to focus on, which is a good and a bad thing, but it means you can like really focus on regionals, and so you might be a bit fresher for regionals, whereas other teams might not be. So it's like a bit of like, I don't think that should ever feel like a disadvantage to being in the grids. And I think the easiest way to solve that would be to just grant worlds points and make teams have to take it seriously. And if you don't, then all right, the team that is 400 points behind you is taking it seriously, and they just gained an extra 400 points on you, and now suddenly they're breathing down your neck. So I think that'd be probably the best solution moving forward, in my opinion, anyway.
Which makes sense, because I do remember there was a lot of teams that just like mentality surrounding the grid is like, yeah, of course we qualify for the major through regionals. We don't really give a about the grid. Not gonna practice as hard. We're gonna let RamS play. Like obviously Archie's dealing with some stuff in school, and he's got his wrist injury and stuff. And it's like, of course, like if you add a little bit more weight, that will also make it so teams are like, yeah, the grid is important, even though we're already qualified for the major through regionals. And there's a lot of different ways that they'll have to balance that and find ways so it doesn't outweigh. Like it doesn't even have to be a ton of points. It just has to be enough to like reward those.
My bad. I thought I was muted.
What were you even saying? I'm curious now. What language are you speaking over there, bro?
I was speaking Armenian.
Oh.
Yeah.
He's actually speaking another language. So he just unmutes and laughs. Thanks, bro.
But yeah, I think that's probably the best solution for the grid, because yeah, like even the situation where we had to I had to sub in and stuff is like, realistically we should have been punished for that, because why wouldn't that punish us? And outside of losing a little bit of money, it's like there was no real detriment. All it got was me like a few replays that I get to save and upload on YouTube,
Paris?
Sort of thing of like.
Chad, hopefully you guys are all enjoying this conversation.
Pick up like Jesse.
I'll condense this down into a video.
Player, and then that's it. As it currently stands.
Yeah, I mean, overall, how'd you guys feel about like just the grid? like the concept of it, allowing teams to have their own broadcasts and all that kind of stuff. I know for organizations, it's really cool. I know for Psyonix, it gets rid of a lot of the pressure on their end. Like obviously they got to organize and make sure that matches and admin stuff lines up, but giving teams the ability to go and showcase not only is really good for like the community and community casters and all that kind of stuff, but also just the concept of what it does. Like I think more esports will start to adopt. Like I think for like CDL and stuff, having a grid-esque thing is massive, for especially for like franchises. The ability to showcase matches that only you can watch if you tune into their broadcast is really good for organizations. Like there's a lot of really cool things that the grid implements.
Yeah, super dope.
Yeah, you could watch whichever team you wanted. You have the choice of which team you want to support, which is pretty cool. And for having FaZe is pretty cool because they were to get like 1,000 viewers or something, and they'd stream after grid and they toast me, and then dang, get 1,000 viewers. But honestly, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have grid, because even though it's like it doesn't mean much, even though like, well, it's still important. We want to be good. We want to do good in it. But at the end of the day, it's more about money than the major spot, because we can make majors through the regionals. It's just it's still Rocket League to be played, and if I didn't have it, I'd be waiting once a month to play a regional, and then that's it. So I think grid's pretty important to be in if you want to consistently play like on stream and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, so obviously while we were at August, I was handling a lot of it, so I can see the stresses behind it. But once once you get an organization involved and stuff, and you know, oh, this caster suits our team better, or we'll have these like custom overlays and stuff. It took RLCS until this weekend gone to introduce like custom overlays, whereas Grid was doing it the whole time. Right. I think Grid's like a great thing that they've done, like really, really good. Like I said, the only thing is like some of the level of competition inside it based on the rewards of it, but like everything else about it is fantastic. The overtime show with Colin Stumpy in EU and No Student Stacks in NA, like that's so sick.
Yeah, I mean it's cool because it just like showcased so much too. Like there's a lot of community casters that people didn't know about and stuff that like that's the major RLCS broadcast, right? And like they showcase that's that team's grid, and all of a sudden it's like that caster is now technically on the main broadcast for Rocket League. That's super cool. Like that's something that allows them to showcase and kind of give back to the community in a way. It's something that I think obviously Sonics has been harped on quite a bit. When they first started, there was a lot of emphasis on community and this and that, and you know, interaction with the community, and a lot of people feel like they're not listened to nowadays. But you see stuff like the grid where they're not afraid to showcase different broadcasts, different styles, like even certain teams from Europe where it is a French speaking broadcast and French casters, they'll still put that up on the main broadcast, which is really cool. I think it shows like the many different facets that are applied to this community that a lot of people just don't really know about. I mean, heck, you look at the pros. How often do you guys really pay attention to South American OC? Cheryl, can you even name the players on those rosters?
Okay, I know you're saying that because of something I said earlier. I said on, I think it was like Johnny Boy. No, it was someone's stream. They were like, it was First Touch. They said, which team do you think is gonna win their championship? And I said, oh, this team, because you know they got Razebull and some other people. I didn't actually know the other two people's names, and now I know it's Razebull, AJG, some other dude. Then we got Coyote TG1.
It's Shad. It's Shad. How do you forget Shad? He's got 3 Ds, bro.
Yeah. And then we got Coyote TG1. We got Tander, Card, and then OC. We got Amphis, Express, CJ, Drippe, Tommy. I know he's
man's not even naming the top 2 teams. Man's not even naming the top 2 teams. Get out of here, bro.
No, wait, what? Amphis, Express, and his teammate.
Yeah, you're naming renegades who didn't. It's Cringe Society in Ground Zero.
Amphis, Torsos, Express. What do you mean?
But then you started saying CJ and Kami. That's renegades, bro. They're 3rd seed. Get them out of here. Get them out of here.
Okay. 2nd seed is Cringe Society, which is what, Deca? I don't know. Is it Deca?
I'm not telling you.
I'm looking it up.
I'm surprised you didn't have Wikipedia up this whole time.
I'm not cheating.
But as it says, I gotta look it up.
Deca still has a Ground Zero Gaming Twitter banner. What is this? Is he on Ground Zero still?
I don't know. Is it? You tell me. You know these rosters really well.
All right, man.
To be fair, I don't even know as well. I'm trying to think.
Deca is
players
uncrowned.
Drippe, Deca, Jules. Wait, that's the number 2 team. You lied to me.
Yeah,
I was
it
saying
is.
the right players.
You were saying the first team, but then you brought in CJ and Kami, who are for Renegades, that are the third seed.
I was adding to
He's
show
just
my knowledge
his
of the
knowledge
region.
is so good. You know, he skips the second seed straight to the third seed. He's got to give them credit. I respect it, man. I respect
I actually can't believe this.
it. Slander.
I know EU players.
I would hope so.
Some of them. Like
Honestly,
I didn't know what Minx Gaming was. No idea who that was. Honestly.
Yeah,
That's
they
fair.
don't even exist anymore. Don't worry.
Oh,
they were
okay.
they were genuinely the 32nd seed in the first regional. That's the only reason
Okay.
I said them. But that's the other thing, because there's so much schedule and stuff, and because there's so much to focus on in your own team. Like, I've barely followed too much of NA. It wasn't until like this final split where I'm like, oh, there's so much happening now. Like, I can actually focus on it. But like, for the most part, it's been tough to even try and think of keeping up with the rest of.
There's so many games, dude.
Yeah, it's just exhausting. Like,
I really wish there was an
honestly.
NA and EU studio, man. Like, I've talked to when I had my my interview for the Pod UC with Cole and Stumpy. Talking like one of the things that we talked about, I was like, I have no idea why they didn't do an EU studio with a Gfinity set. Like NA studio, EU studio, dedicated to EU, and then you have them come together for the World Championship. Where you have like a casting team. So like the NA casting team only focuses on North America. The EU casting team only focuses on EU, and then you come together and have a collaboration. So you have your experts dedicated to one scene, and then you have OCE cast, and it would be so cool to see that. And then obviously the EU talent can actually build and develop. It's not just Johnny and Shogun, and obviously now with things being online, but it kind of makes me nervous. You know, if we go back to LAN stuff and in studio stuff, what are they going to do with all these new casters they brought in?
that's exactly what I was thinking.
There's
Right?
so
Like,
many. Yeah.
I'm worried about it too. I'm like, if they don't go to an EU studio, we're gonna lose. You know, Shogun. We might, because Shogun. I don't know about his visa situation now, but like that was like pretty much one of the main reasons he couldn't do in studio and NA, right? So, if that's a no go for him, then we lose Shogun. If Johnny, Cole, Stumpy, those guys can't get like visas sorted properly, then they're out of the equation, and all of a sudden we're back to square one. Like this. It would fully make sense for them to have an EU studio. Like, there's studios in London, and the majority of people can travel down to London if they wanted to do an EU studio, because majority of people from the UK anyway. So there's no reason why they can't have that set up. And yeah, I really hope they do.
Yep. So I guess this is the way that I present it. We've pretty much, what it feels like, talked about most of the nuances, pros and cons of the format and schedule, prize pool, you know, all the things. Like, it feels like there's a lot of things that are just kind of like, yep, cool, thumbs up, you know, without going into specifics. So if there is changes you wanted to implement, like an EU studio where you play live, all that kind of stuff, what are the things that you hope they implement near and short-sighted? Like if there's things that you could see them implementing right away that would make stuff just better immediately next season, what would those things be? And then long-term, things you would like to see as well. Those are the last two things I'll harp you guys on. Just because we've been here for a bit. I appreciate it. Appreciate you guys taking the time, seriously.
Jerry, you're welcome to go first if you'd like.
No, I'm okay.
Are you sure? I insist.
Yeah. I
Well,
said it
here, I'll
first.
start. I'll
Okay,
start
okay.
to make it easier for you guys. We'll talk about something we just
Alright.
talked about. An NA and an EU studio.
Yeah, I think they should implement an NA and an EU studio.
Nice. Did you come up with that
yeah.
one on yourself?
Yeah,
I'm so proud of you, man. That's so smart.
Yeah.
That is a pretty good idea, huh?
Yeah, thanks. Jerry, you'll go?
I concur.
Oh, nice. All right, cool. I think communication is probably a huge one. It's kind of been the main gripe against Psionic/Epic for a long time. It's gotten slightly better, but like it'd be cool if we knew things more than 48 hours in advance. At times, like we get given schedules or seeding, especially when they could have been done a long time ago. Like, it still feels a bit rushed and last minute sometimes. I know like there was difficulties with COVID and everything, and like, you know, the LAN's announcement is like fair enough that they had to make the announcement, but for example, the timing, they announced the fact that there was no going to be a Worlds an hour before the EU RLCS started, and so everyone was like, oh yeah, that's hype, let's about to get to our warm-up scrim, and then there's like an announcement and everyone goes in and just feeling dead. It's like that sort of stuff can be handled a lot better. So that's just the thing there. And like I said, like when you reference back to school, if you have the schedule laid out in front of you perfectly, like from the get-go, what times, what days, and even if it's a little bit malleable to try and accommodate for any issues that get pointed out early, that'd be the best. But like there's sometimes like they'll make a change without really consulting anyone, or it doesn't feel like they are, and then it's kind of like suck it up and deal with it, as opposed to like understanding the issues that are coming up with that and stuff like that.
Yeah, honestly, can you guys just skip me? Important.
I promise, dude, you won't get suspended. If you do, I'll make a video and I'll reap the benefits. So either way, you should talk.
Yeah, I'll bring up a new topic. The championship was kind of interesting how they did it, where they made it separate matches, separate days, best of sets.
Mhm.
That was kind of interesting.
Like dislike.
I will say the only thing I truly liked about it was that Energy and Envy, the top 2 seeds, the bye actually was really useful because it gave them a guaranteed top 4, and it didn't make them play a team that was coming off of a win the same day. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. The fact that they spaced it so no team played more than once on the same day was fantastic.
I think that was pretty epic. I don't know. It was kind of weird because if you were third, fourth, I honestly think if you got third, fourth seed, that was the best seed. Like I think I would no number 1 is obviously the best seed, but I'd rather be 3, 4 than 2, in my opinion. Because then you can, if you win, you play the number 2 team, and if you lose, you still have another chance. Like you're the only team that has the 2 chances, and if you win, you play the number 2 team, but if you lose, you play the number 1 team. But I don't know. That's just weird to me because obviously the number 1 team gets to play the easiest team because they play the winner 5-6, loser of 3-4,
Mhm.
and number 2 just has the hardest spot because they play the winner of 3-4, which is probably the hardest match, and they only get 1 life, whereas 3-4 gets 2 lives technically. I don't know how to explain it, but
Yeah. I'm curious if they'll still do that. I think it might have just been like a band-aid for online only, just to mix it up, to make it feel special. I don't know if they're gonna still do that at Worlds in the future, Like, I don't know.
Definitely not.
Yeah, like I would love a week-long Worlds. I think it'd be amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of things that they're gonna have to try to figure out and how they're gonna do live events and stuff like that. And these are the things that, obviously, when we're talking about communication and timing of announcements and all that kind of stuff, hopefully, and this goes to one of my personal long-term changes, I don't think this is up to them, unfortunately, but they need to expand their team. They need to, at Epic, provide some serious funding and help to that team. Hire some people, give Corey and those guys some help. For those that don't know, the RL Esports team is 5, technically 6 people. They just brought in one guy from ESPN, former, who is their director of esports now. But the team itself is Murdy, or Shice for those that know him, Jake, Ian, Skylar, and Corey. That is it. 5 people on the Rocket League esports team.
That's insane. Honestly,
that is not enough. That is a lot of people wearing way too many hats, and you can tell. It makes sense that, communication-wise and some of the timing events and a lot of the other things, they're just trying to do too much for 5 people. I cannot imagine the amount of work that team is putting in to make this happen. I cannot imagine.
You can name all of them. You got Devin, Shiest, Connor, or something like that.
No, I literally named the 5 people. I literally named the 5 people. It's Ian, Skylar, Shiest, Murdy, Jake, and Corey. That is the 5 people on that Rocket League esports team. They just brought in a director of esports. How much that person is doing and stuff, I don't know. It's a new hire. But he's former ESPN. He was there for like 15 years. But 6 people on Rocket League esports is making this happen. That's insane. They need help. They need a bigger team. Some of these guys, like Corey and stuff, need a team underneath themselves just so they can work on the format. A team under them just so they can work with players. Like, that stuff is imperative to making sure that Rocket League runs as smoothly as the players, the coaches, the viewers deserve. Because at this point, it's been 5 years, and Rocket League is definitely in a ability to become top dog. Like it has all the things it needs to become a tier 1 esport. We all agree with that. It's just there's certain implementations that are, I think, held back because of what it, again, this is things that are just speculative, but it feels like the mentality surrounding what Rocket League Esports is and how much seriousness Psyonix wanted to put into it. And now that Epic with the purchase hopefully is going to give it that love of Unreal Engine money to really help. And I think it really starts first for long-term changes, expanding the team. I think they need to hire more desperately and really get help, just so these guys aren't so overworked and they have other people that they can rely on to really take Rocket League to the next level. Because on the esports side of things, I could just tell, like, this isn't a short-term thing. This is something that Rocket League Esports, like Corey and those guys, have been doing this with this size of a staff for years. It's not enough people. And they just recently brought in Jake too, strangest stranger for those that don't know, this past year. So it's technically, it was 4 people, now it's 5, and they have the director of esports. So they need to expand desperately. I think that's one of the first things. I think you can probably put NAEU Studio in that conversation. Obviously, that's, I don't know if that's short term or long term. That's up for debate. But an NAEU Studio. I also think implementing Middle East and in Asia as regions. Merchandise, short term merchandise. Wouldn't it be nice if you guys could buy like an RL Esports shirt or like mug, hoodie, anything? It'd be kind of cool.
I think you only get it if you're a player and like you made Worlds.
Yep.
Because I have one shirt that's Season 8 Madrid, Spain, and it's an Octane on the front. I don't think I have any other Rocket League shirts on there right now.
So the only way you can you can purchase that stuff is if you attend the event. And Madrid, Spain had one shirt, to my knowledge. In the past, they've done like hoodies and stuff like that, but like why there isn't an online store, no idea. You should be able to purchase a shirt with a crest that has the RL Esports logo or something on it. I don't know why you can't do any of that stuff. Or hats. I have Rocket League mugs that I got from Twitch my first season, and you literally cannot get them. Things
Nice.
things like that.
The season 2 one as well.
Yeah.
The t-shirt with like all the teams on the back. Oh, that was so sick.
Yep.
As well.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of things like that. I think short term that they could implement that would make a huge difference. Obviously, that means expanding the team, and like there should be a merchandise team for RL Esports. Like these are things that I think are, yes, additional investments that may sound expensive, but long-term benefit. If you really want to make this a big franchise and stuff, like that's the thing that scares me, is like franchising for Rocket League. I think could be a thing in the future. And I'm warming more and more up to the idea as I learn more about it. But there's a lot of things that make me nervous if they switch to that, because I think about like, yo, you have people buying in franchise, right? A lot of the way they make the money is the partnership deals that they do with merchandising and stuff like that. And like, I look at how little merchandising there is right now, aka none, and I'm like, ooh, it's a little scary. I would rock a Garrett G Rocket League shirt. Well, that's up to Garrett G, man. Garrett G's got to make his own merch. Like,
do you remember when they implemented in-game items that were based on players, but they didn't really consult them?
Yep. Or pay them a royalty.
The eyebrows and stuff.
Or pay them a royalty.
Yep.
Yep.
That was something. But yeah, it has to be said though, in the past 12 months within Psyonix and Rocket League, like they've done incredible steps compared to like when you think back to what it was like.
Yeah.
Some of the things we were fighting for would be for like 3 years straight or 2 years, and it's like now they're like getting better at it massively, and it does feel promising. Like I feel like we're finally in a position where it's like cool, like we're about to kick on. I think it'll be really telling how this next season goes to see if it's really like in the point of like real progression.
Rocktan, they're not allowed to use his likeness like that.
It's going to be the big change that we really see for the next like season or two.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, again, I think it just goes back like clearly the guys are working hard. Clearly there's a lot of things they're doing to improve. I mean, if you want to go back to the original video that I put out about, you know, teams leaving and the 13 teams that signed that petition and, you know, their frustrations, like 13 big organizations signed saying, hey, we want communication, we want this, we want that. We're frustrated. Obviously, there was a large emphasis and kind of a wake-up call that came in, and you can see those changes happening. But I feel like a lot of those things wouldn't be such a problem if their team was bigger, if they had more help. And that's not saying that they're not doing a phenomenal job. It's not saying that they're not working hard. It's not saying that they're, you know, bad at what they do. It just looks like
Just they're not 10 people.
it's 5 people. It's so difficult to do what they're doing with 5 people. It's unbelievable what they're actually able to accomplish, especially despite pandemic and everything else and all the changes and adjustments they had to make mid-season. It's pretty commendable on what they're accomplishing. What is something that's a pipe dream, Gyro and RamS? What's something that, like, sky's the limit, no money is an issue? What's your thing that, like, God, I wish Rocket League Esports had this thing? Maybe that you've seen from like other games or something.
Money isn't an issue, you say?
Obviously, don't be like, I want Rocket League on space, you know, like.
I don't really know, to be honest. I don't really think about these things that often. What could be the best thing for Rocket League? I don't know.
Doesn't CSGO have a system where pretty much most of their events are LAN events at this point, right?
Yeah, every single one.
Yeah, like, yeah, that would be another level of insane, like, for Rocket League. The regionals and all the majors and everything were all LAN. Like, if they're regional LANs, so then, you know, there'll be a UK one, a Paris one, a Germany one, and, you know, for the split and stuff like that. And then obviously the international LAN can, like, vary. Yeah, I think that would be, like, the best step that they could possibly do. Not, like, now, but when it's possible, it'd be so sick.
Chat, we're talking RLCS and Rocket League specific. Yeah, like live events for league play stuff, regionals, etc. would be super cool. Grid. And you do those within, you know, so those that don't know, like Overwatch League has all of their matches. They make the teams live in LA and they play out of a studio in Burbank. But they live locally, so that can happen. And then when the times comes. Now the nice thing is RLCS, their production partner, is DreamHack ESL. So my assumption would be when international majors and stuff were happening, they would schedule them at a DreamHack or something to that extent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I assumed what would happen. Other implementations I think that they need are obviously spectator updates, and like it's still like bare bones. There's still some things like I would like to see them refine and work with. HLTV is a prime example, and the ability for us as viewers to do stuff in-game or embedded viewership within Rocket League game itself, with like an HLTV client where I can pick individual players' perspectives. Like I, as a spectator watching the games, can pick and choose what I want to watch. If I want to watch only Garrett's perspective or only Gyro's perspective, the ability to pull that kind of stuff. There's certain difficulties, but I do like the built-in pick'ems and like digital access stuff that you can do that gives you more insight onto like specific stats and things that they work with the API. Pick'ems are really cool because it allows you to get unique items that are really, really cool based on how well you do in pick'ems. The only thing with that is it kind of hinders from the whole like gambling thing and all the issues going on with that. So that may not be a possibility. The one I was just going to say that Chad also mentioned is VR digital tickets. So like if I have a VR headset and I can't attend LAN, there's a section at LAN where if I have a VR headset, I can purchase a digital LAN ticket, and it allows me to put on my VR headset, and there's a section with cameras that I can then sit and watch the experience as if I'm there. It's really, really cool. It'd be so cool to be able to sit in this. You'd be like basically sitting in the stands and watching LAN as if you're there, even though you have a VR headset at home. Stuff like that would be really cool.
Meet and greet, you just see some pros walking up to you, give you some high fives.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, something like that would be super cool. And like if they have, imagine like for a digital ticket, you can spend like $20-$30, right? You have a VR headset and you could move to different places. So like the walkout tunnel, you have a camera, you know, you have a place in the stands, you know, like there's certain sections where they have set up like 2-3 sections set up, you know, maybe more, maybe less. It'd be super cool. So for those that can't spend the thousands of dollars to fly across the world to do stuff, to have a VR headset and just be able to chill and watch the matches as if you're there and get that same kind of experience, that's definitely like a long-term implementation. Another one that would be really cool that I've seen stuff like Dota and League of Legends do is they do augmented reality stuff with their stages. So in League of Legends, I've seen them do like where they set up a cube with projectors to showcase, and like when they display the matches in the middle of the arena, it actually shows like the gameplay and stuff. Imagine being able to see like a 3D like projected model of Rocket League while it's being played. Like having a mini map, but it's actually 3D.
That'd be dope.
Stuff like that.
We should pitch these ideas.
These are very, very
dream.
expensive and difficult things to do, but they are possible.
We're not, I don't think we're there yet. I think
definitely
something
not.
I just
No,
remembered
these are definitely
is,
long-term changes. Like I said, it's not one of my.
in-game spectating options for coaches is the one I forgot
I was
to
gonna
mention.
say that.
That's the easiest one that that should be next. That should be like RLCS season 11. Hey, we've managed to do this thing for you guys. Like I feel like that is almost
Spectate blue,
imperative.
spectate orange.
Yeah, I will be
Yeah.
doing. I have a dedicated video coming out that I'm scripting right now about updates to the spectator. And I was waiting to see if they were going to do anything this season for spectator updates. Obviously, I want to definitely talk about the changes that they implemented, like finally showing boost meters and stuff like that within their client. But still a lot of things that I'm interested in. How do you guys feel about showcasing if the person has a jump available only for the spectator, not for the coaches?
Has a jump available?
Yeah, so like when you get a flip reset as a caster, I have to guess. I have to speculate. I don't know if you actually got it or not. I just have to base upon visual and assumption. And as a commentator, you should never have to assume or speculate about something ever.
Just understand the game, lol.
I mean, I most times can see if he used it or not, but like it's super dumb to be like when you're sitting there be like, man, I think he faked it. I don't know if he had it or not. But I'm pretty sure he faked it. And then in reality he comes back and puts out a tweet. He's like, yeah, I actually didn't get it. I couldn't jump. It just ended up working out that way. Should never have to guess or assume that stuff.
It
Ever.
is ooh la
There should be a
la
visual
Lawler.
that showcases. I don't think it should go to like the spectator client for those that like players or coaches if they have coaches spots, because that's information that they can use. Like if you're live coaching and stuff, you'd be like, yo, he's got his flip available.
It's a flip. It's a flip.
Yeah.
It's a flip.
You can't have that stuff, right? That changes.
Flip.
Yeah. So there's certain things like that, but like to me as a viewer watching, that stuff would be awesome because then you know that and it builds that intensity and it's that bigger game sense of being like, wow, he has this thing that's available. Is he going to use it or not? And it builds that intensity and that hype. So I think little things like that would be really cool.
You know, like the main the main gripe against having in-game spectating at the moment is like, oh, like the coach can spectate the other team and call out if someone has low boost or call out boost amounts and stuff. I went into a scrim and was like, let me try it for a game or two. It's impossible to do on top of comms. Like I'm just being, there's like one situation in every 30 games where like it actually is useful, or like, oh, he spawned left side after a demo.
Unreal Engine 3 hunger.
But like it's so ridiculously hard that I feel like it shouldn't even be an issue. But yeah, anyway.
Long-term change, Unreal Engine 5 update, switching to the new engine because right now it's on Unreal Engine 3 and it could definitely use an update.
How much would that change?
I don't know. So I've talked about this in videos before. I just don't know what the implementation is because obviously they own Unreal Engine 3. I don't know what it would take to transition to a new engine and how much it would adjust the physics engine, or if they could just basically do a copy paste and how easy or difficult that is. I don't know enough about coding to know how difficult it is to transfer a physics-based system over. I do not know because it's all done server side. So although Unreal Engine is going to make the game run more consistent, it's going to make implementing features and stuff easier. Unreal Engine 5 would almost be exclusive to next gen consoles. So 2 versions of RL would have to exist.
Yeah, that sounds like a potential issue then.
Well, in their lawsuit, they detail something called Rocket League Next. I don't know if that is going to be just, hey, it's updated for 120 FPS on the new generation consoles, or if it's going to be a new client, an actual new game. So I don't know.
Interesting either way.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, well, I have to leave. I have something to do. But I will say one last thing. Psionics, if you're here, please fix the max volume music that happens whenever you open the Rocket League, because I always forget and it hurts my ears. And that's it. I have to go. I have something.
Oh, and sub to Gyro's
important.
YouTube.
Yeah, so does YouTube.
Yeah, you should.
He put on
FaZe Gyro on YouTube.
Yeah, so Gyro wasn't gonna be here, and then he put on his big boy pants because we yelled at him, and now he's been here, and we appreciate you, Gyro. Thank you for actually doing it. You didn't have to, but you did.
I will do what's needed for content,
Attaboy.
even if I don't feel like it.
It's a grind, man. It's a grind. Get out of here, dude.
You couldn't
You got
even
stuff to do.
tell I was depressed.
Making it
Alright.
too real here, Gyro. Making it too real.
That's okay. Alright, see you.
Talk soon, bud.
Thanks for having
Again,
me.
man.
Peace.
Later, brother. Yeah, RamS as well. Any last things you want to say? I can let you get out of here. We've been talking for a bit.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Have fun with the German Amigo situation.
I forgot we still got to talk about that.
Yeah, you still got to talk about that. Good luck with that. Don't don't play with fire, you'll get burnt. You know.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Can't wait to read that line.
That's gonna be good. All right, I'm gonna go chill out as well. So thanks for
Sounds good,
having me
man.
on.
Yep. Thanks for all the insight. Appreciate you dropping some info and giving your thoughts, man. It's makes it appreciative. I don't know if I'm gonna chat. I guess you guys can decide. I don't know if I want to just export this whole thing from start to finish and leave it raw, unedited, or if I want to basically take the notes I have and concise it down. I'll probably leave it unedited just because I think it's better having all the context, even the cars honking in the background. I think we can just leave it unedited, leave it raw, and just export it. I'll make a short intro for it and just be like, yo, this is a thing that we did for the moment, blah blah blah. So
Just make sure you drop the YouTube in when you do that as well. Then
I will
See you
definitely
play.
I will put your guys' socials. Go hit these people up on social media. I'll let you get out of here and then I'll chill for you too.
All right, sweet.
Yep, appreciate you taking time, man. Catch you later.
All right, take it. See you.
Later. All right, chat. Again, massive shouts to RamS and Gyro. If you guys do not support them or follow them on socials or anything already, it's RamS_RL and Explosive Gyro, GYRO. Make sure you guys go show them some love on all their socials. They obviously took time out of their day to come sit and chat, and they definitely don't have to. And it was really for the moment. So really fun conversation. Good to kind of recap all of RLCS as a whole, and get some perspective not only from NA and EU, but also player coach as well as third party. Greatly appreciate RamS and Gyro taking the time.